You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages of the newspapers as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Guardian columnist Zoe Williams and the political commentator Benedict Spence. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the Mirror has the stark headline, "Killer Dogs to be Banned," and pictures Ian Price, who was killed in an attack by two of the dogs. That's also the lead story in the Express. They add the hero dad was protecting his elderly mother. Meanwhile, the Eye points out that the ban will be introduced in 2025 after an amnesty. The Times reports the Prime Minister is ready to phase out petrol and diesel cars on a strict timeframe, despite pressure from Conservative MPs. The Telegraph leads on Partygate. They say Rishi Sunak was told not to quit by Rupert Murdoch's team and that he drafted a resignation letter the day he was fined. The Daily Mail reports a Labour government in Wales could bring in blanket 20 miles per hour limits to improve road safety, but the Conservatives call it beyond insane. The FT says Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has ruled out US-style subsidies as he signs off a £500 million Tata package to modernise the UK's steel industry. The Guardian reports mass campaign is needed to curb unhealthy eating and avoidable cancers. That includes putting labels on alcohol. Say bye to summer and a big hello to autumn, says the Daily Star. They've gone with the headline, "That's all, folks." And a reminder that by scanning the QR codes you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Zoe Williams and Benedict Spence. Welcome to you both. Let's start with the front page of the Mirror, and this is the dog ban, specifically the XL bully that the Prime Minister is promising, and this following on from the death today of Ian Price, the 52-year-old who was attacked by two of the dogs. Take us into this story, Zoe.
So there's been a lot of pressure, started actually by the Red Tops, to ban the dogs all week since the attack in Birmingham last week. And it was a really stark video. I mean, there was absolutely no ambiguity around what had happened. The dog was out of control. The little girl hadn't done anything. The two bystanders were, heroes, but they couldn't really stop it. It was a really graphic depiction of just how much power these dogs have. And so there's been kind of pressure on Sunak. Suella Braverman made that statement in the middle of last week, basically saying she would take advice on whether to ban the breed. And from that point on, it was one more bad news story away from being banned, I think. And without question, there is a problem with the breed. There's been kind of significant overbreeding because they sell for so much money, and obviously they're not a recognised breed from the Kennel Club, so there's no regulation around breeding. So you do get a lot of overbreeding, and also there is pretty strong evidence that the gene pool anyway, insofar as it came from America, was the kind of dog fighting breeding had leaked out into the kind of general population of bullies. I mean, in American dogfighting circles, they're bred so consistently for aggression that the puppies have to be taken away from the bitches before they're 5 weeks old because the bitches will attack their own puppies. That's how aggressive they are. So there is a definite problem, but breed bans never work, and that's why since the 1991 Dogs Act, there haven't been any new breeds added. And it's not because there haven't been more terrible events. There was a period when the Akita was responsible for a lot of attacks, but they don't work for a number of reasons. Among them, which is going to be most pressing for the XL bully, this isn't an actual. This is a crossbreed, right? So you can't say what an XL bully is. You can only do it by appearance. So you're going to sweep up a lot of dogs similar in appearance to an XL bully, and a lot of dogs that haven't actually done anything. And what that does is it chases a lot of XL bully owners underground. And then you're in a really kind of murky space where there's no real regulation, there's no real oversight. You're waiting for the next negative event. You don't really know how to control it because it becomes very nefarious. And there's literally no there's no dog expert, there's no animal charity in the country or beyond who says go for a breed ban. It's just a kind of politics responding to a news cycle, which is a real shame.
Benedict, I interviewed a little earlier American Bully kennel owner, and what he was saying is the only way to actually test for this XL breed, which isn't technically a breed, is to do a DNA test, because it's a mix with the perfectly fine American Bully that he breeds and another dangerous dog, vicious dog.
It's... Half of all the XL bullies in the UK can be traced back to the same great-grandparent in the United States. That gives you an idea of how inbred this dog is. And the first thing I would like to say is that this is cruelty, and that there are people who, frankly, should be imprisoned before we consider what measures we take about the dogs themselves, because some of these dogs, a lot of these dogs, will probably end up being euthanized, whether they kill people, whether they attack people or not, simply because of how this has got to this situation. Regulation does need to be brought in, because you cannot have it that you have an animal like this that is being bred specifically for violence. That is what it is. There is no other way of getting around it. That is what it is being bred for, and that is what the continuation of certain bloodlines is about. It is violence and status. And yes, a lot of these dogs end up in normal households, people who are very good with controlling dogs. A lot of these dogs will never end up attacking people. And that is where I think you're right. We need to have some sort of proportion about this. We cannot have it that it is the situation where lots of dogs are just euthanized sort of carte blanche. That would be very cruel as well. But I think actually when you look at this animal and you consider that it was responsible for 60% of fatal dog attacks in the UK last year, that's not taking this year into account, where there has been an uptick in the numbers, you have to say that something does have to be done about it. And OK, maybe it cannot be defined clearly as a sort of an individual breed. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be taking very serious steps to prevent its proliferation across the country. And I mean, the Dangerous Dogs Act, it did not, it didn't eradicate violent dogs in the UK, but it did lead to a dramatic reduction in the amount of attacks until loopholes were brought in around certain breeds. It is true. It did.
Can you give me any numbers on that?
I can't give you numbers, but it did. I think it was about 30%, is from what I remember. I will go back in the break and we'll have a look. But it did lead to a reduction until there were loopholes brought in for, again, certain things that you couldn't classify along certain lines. So it is somewhere that requires, it is an area that requires, I would say, a lot of caution. It requires a lot of thoroughness. It isn't something that you can just have a carte blanche approach. But it will, I'm afraid, when you have this number of dogs attacking people and deaths occurring, we can sit here and we can say that this is sort of easy politics, and it is. It's low-hanging fruit. It's something that the government can just sort of snap their fingers and go, oh, yes, we're taking a tough stance. But that doesn't mean that there should be no action taken at all. These are animals that are snapping and that are attacking people, not because all of them are dangerous, but because a lot of inbreeding, immoral inbreeding, is going in specifically for violence and strength and size. And that is something that has
But as of the moment, that's not illegal, though, is it?
It isn't illegal, but it should be.
But actually, no,
it absolutely should be.
You're mixing two separate issues. The overbreeding isn't actually deliberated or done for traits. The overbreeding is just because people are letting bitches have a litter and then they're not waiting long enough, and that creates a lot of temperamental instability.
The reason that this dog exists...
whatever. But
so that is why it's happening.
Well, no, that's not why it's happening, because, you could say that the Staffordshire Bull Terrier was devised to fight bulls, but it doesn't mean that all Staffordshire Bull Terriers are violent dogs.
I'm not saying that all... I've very specifically said that not all of these dogs are, and that's why we can't have a carte blanche approach.
Whatever the genesis of the kind of aggressive tendency, and I don't deny that it's there is a lot of temperamental instability just because there's too many of them. And the reason there's too many of them is because they're already slightly underground dogs. So you kind of, whenever you create a situation, and I don't know, because there's this story in the Eye about having an amnesty until 2025. I don't know what that actually means in practice. Does it mean that you have until 2025 to get your dog a certificate of exemption? Or
what it's saying is no mass culling. Zona set to have this grace period before the breed is taken off the streets.
But then when you say your dog is 6, does that mean when it's 8 it becomes illegal? It's like so...
Well, this is why I say you
so
cannot have a
murky.
blanket policy that is, OK, all of the dogs are banned and we're going to, I don't know, euthanise them or something. You can't really do that. But I think something that we haven't mentioned, and that is the question of ownership, because this has been slightly muddied around this conversation because lots of people are trying to push the idea that it is exclusively the dogs and it has nothing to do with the owners, and other people are trying to say, no, it's bad owners rather than the breed.
Well, what the
It is
kennel
it's a
breeders
one and
have
a
been
half version
saying,
of the
that
other.
it's not bad dogs, it's bad
Well, this
owners.
is why I'm saying that a lot of these dogs are more prone to being temperamental, to being violent, to snapping. But at the same time, if a dog is brought up in an environment where it is not properly trained, properly socialised, it doesn't get the stimulation that it requires, it doesn't have the outdoor access that it requires, any kind of dog, be it a Doberman, be it a Chihuahua, is going to have traits that are undesirable. And so
But
I
the
think that is
question is
something that
whether
needs to be
it's
borne in mind.
inherently
I think
vicious.
it is quite clear that it is more likely in this breed that these traits will
Yeah,
be
yeah.
there. But you will get that in any social that is not properly conditioned and social.
I mean, there is also it is a fact that they're incredibly powerful. I mean, they're unbelievable. I mean, I saw
Well,
two...
full size, they're about sort of nearly 10 stone,
I
aren't
mean,
they?
that they're,
in weight?
and the sheer weight per square inch of tooth power is astronomical. It's something you wouldn't get outside a zoo. So there's a kind of combination of things going on, but I don't see that this is actually going to do anything other than make it worse. Because what you're going to do is get the people who can get a certificate of exemption because their dogs are well trained and they know what they're doing, and they're going to, and that will be fine. But everybody else will just be even harder to kind of...
But something has to be done, though, doesn't it? I mean, when we look at the front of the Express and the human story...
You need more than 48 hours. You cannot make policy based on 6-hour news cycles. I mean, it's like...
But the Prime Minister is saying that it isn't, as sad as it is, isn't based on the death of Mr Price, of Ian Price, who lost his life to 2 of these dogs. It's something that the government were looking at previously.
Yeah, I know, but Suella Braverman asked for that advice on Wednesday. No, hang on a sec, it was Monday that she said she was taking advice. Now, that advice didn't land on Friday, just the news cycle caught up with it on Friday.
I've been reading articles about this specific problem with Bully XL since early 2022. It hasn't really hit the mainstream, and it must be said, it's sort of hit the red tops relatively recently, but there has been a very concerted push within certain sort of policy circles within Westminster to try to get this onto the agenda. And I think they have been not fortunate because it's very tragic, but that this has sort of hit the news cycle, that they've been able to sort of move this slightly up the news agenda because you can't have dogs attacking people and the government just going, oh, well, there's nothing we can do about it. So
Yeah,
this has been going on for some
Benedict,
time.
You've got to admit it looks a bit dicey, doesn't it?
Oh, I'm not questioning that this is very much a government going, we need to look tough on something, this'll do. I'm not questioning that at all. But you can't just have it, that this is allowed to continue and the government goes, there's nothing we can do.
Indeed. Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Zoe Williams and Benedict Spence. Let's take a look at this story, pages 8 to 9 of the Times. And basically, what this story is talking about, that it really is going to have to be for Keir Starmer to mess up, really, to give Sunak the advantage in the general election. So it's his to lose.
It's his to lose. I mean, the thing is, you know, the polls have been with him for so long in such alarming for the Conservatives numbers. I can see why they're saying this and I can see why they're hoping for it. But, you know, actually, basically, this is a message of caution for Starmer, right? So all the Conservative strategists and all the Labour strategists are agreed that the only thing that's going to take the Tories, that is going to give any wind to the Tories' sail, is a massive clanger by Starmer. But what that does to the Labour Party is just make them more and more and more cautious, because they're like, as long as we don't do anything...
But it makes him incredibly nervous.
Exactly. It's like he's carrying a Ming vase across a polished floor. He's like, as long as I don't drop it, I get to keep the vase.
As everybody says it more and more and more, it becomes more likely to happen.
Yeah,
It's harder not to drop it.
exactly. And that's not how elections are won. So even though, you know, I can see what the polls say, I can see it looks that way, I can see why the Tories are in despair, I still don't think you win an election carrying a Ming vase like this. You know,
Has
you
anyone
need
tried?
a bit of. Well, you just need a bit of. You need a bit of.
I think
like,
it's
oomph.
curious because I think we're all sort of assuming it'll be a sort of a triumphal procession because the polls are that large. But even with the polls as they are, it won't be that large a majority if things currently stay as they are. And people are expecting those polls to narrow simply because a lot of Tory voters have nowhere else to go, really. And I think one of the things that I would say in sort of Keir Starmer's defence, which is perhaps a bit unusual, is, I mean, earlier this week when there was the suggestion that he was going to go to Europe and try and strike a deal with the European Union, and he was trying to sort of appeal to both sides. I'm going to do a deal with Europe, pro-EU, pragmatic, progressive, but also it's about foreign powers, criminal gangs, trying to appeal to the red wall, trying to put some red meat on the bones. And then the suggestions came out, well, this might mean, of course, taking people in from the European Union. OK, you can try to make that maybe work, but as luck would have it, 10,000 people wash up on the shores of Lampedusa that very week. Now, that's something that Keir Starmer cannot control. But it is the sort of thing that you can understand why he would be very cautious, because it's the sort of thing he can't control. If he's trying to make a sensible deal with the European Union or with whoever, and then all of the media focuses on, oh, good Lord, twice the population of an island in the Mediterranean has turned up on that island, and they're all going to be coming here, and certain papers push that idea, you can understand why he'd be going, well, I try my best, but you can see how it's going to be spun.
You see, the thing is what's interesting. If you look at what the Conservatives think Starmer's missteps have been, they are saying it looks like he's too soft on immigration. He's not going to keep the borders safe, and you know this is a massive.
But he's tried to combat that, though, hasn't he?
Well, the irony is.
The irony, I think, is that whatever he says, they end up attacking him as though he were Jeremy Corbyn. So whatever comes out of his mouth, the press attacks him, the Tories attack him, as though he just said, let's fling open the borders and have some humanity. Now, I think that's a really good argument for actually having some boldness. You're going to be hung for a sheep as for a lamb anyway. Why not take the sheep? Why not say, let's have some humanity?
We are in a
Why not
strange...
say, when I look at the Lampedusa photos, what I do not think is a threat to my own livelihood, I look at those poor, desperate people and I thank God they didn't drown like so many others have. Why not say this stuff? Because they're going to, you know, the Daily Mail's going to pretend you said it.
It's a strange kind of hostage situation where the Tories are saying all of these bad things are going to get worse under Keir Starmer. And if Keir Starmer doesn't respond to that, then he's sort of confirming it, rather than turning around and going, well, hang on, how did we get into that? Who is the government at the moment? That's not what he's doing.
Or maybe it's easier to tread very carefully with that Ming vase.
So obvious.
We've just got time quickly to have a look at the Daily Star. That's all, folks. Quickly, we're discussing that reference, whether everybody understands that. But it's Bugs Bunny, that's what he's saying. The end of the cartoons. What are they referring to, Zoe?
To be fair, Gillian, the Star is not read by very many children, or indeed Generation Z. I don't even know any millennials who read the Star. So, yeah, they're playing very squarely to their base, which is people like us, and saying that we're going to have no more summer, and today was the last beautiful day of the year, which is a real shame, because I was in a cafe earlier saying to my friend, we should come back here before the weather breaks. And it's already broken.
Plus, no more dangerous dogs, so that's good news for the bunnies out there. There's going to be a lot more of them roaming around.